What's up, guys? So again, today is the 3rd of March, 2017. I already did a video earlier today, so yeah. Just being consistent. Anyway, so I did a video essentially talking about the scientific evidence of astrology. Validating astrology through science methods. I'm going to continue on with some of those videos because, as I said, there's multiple different research manuscripts or whatever, essays, that sort of thing, documentation, published works that thoroughly legitimize astrology, and in fact, this one in particular, the radio transmission thing, not only validated astrology, but it actually became essential for the radio transmission engineers for RCA, the company RCA, to then learn and use transit aspects in astrology in order to adapt to any interference that would affect the quality of long-distance shortwave transmission with radio. So I'm going to go into that. And if I see, I've kind of been bitchy lately anyway, but if I seem really, not snappy, but, okay, when I've read this before, but as I make my own notes and I rewrite the content in which I'm absorbing in my own words, and obviously that's the best way for you to completely and thoroughly understand and absorb something. And as I was writing the last bit of this, I was getting really angry. Granted, we know that Mars is in Aries, so we could go ahead and take that into consideration, but still, it does piss me off. And it pisses me off more so because as I continue to research things such as this, dig up things that the public isn't necessarily in the know about, whether that's because people are just, not looking for it, and or if it's being, cast to the wayside, I'd go with the latter than anything. It pisses me off that there's, for you to go to the extent that it might possibly just be, it just got overlooked is one thing, but when it continuously is swept under the rug, it's no longer looking plausible that it was just overlooked. It's intentionally being covered up. Which also another thing I find fascinating, I believe it was in 1913 in New York, Manhattan, when there was an astrologer that was arrested for fraud of fortune telling. I actually have, there was like a brief documentary clip on it somewhere on some TV channel years ago, and I'd never seen it, and I actually tried to look for like a copy or something I could buy, download or anything. Couldn't find anything. So when it looped again on my DVR, I recorded it, and I still have yet to ever find anything else on it, which I find interesting. So that just further validates my speculations that it's covered up, and that's not crazy for me to say because there's lots of things that we don't know about, and it's intentional. Anyway, so I'm going to stop being all crazy and ranty and going on this Piscean trip of conspiracies and secrets and shit. I know it's the appropriate season for that, but let's kind of stay on track. So, the scientific evidence of astrology, radio transmission. It's the strongest, most compelling evidence to prove the validity and consistency and the usefulness even of astrology with aspects, because aspects are important. In fact, I wouldn't even say if you ask me, because obviously with scientific evidence as well. Aspects, I hate to say that there's standards for everything, but this is the one time when I think that there's certain specific esoteric laws that apply to things. Aspects either have a more substantial influence or take higher priority than some of the other kind of characteristics or signatures in a chart. Meaning, the dignities and the placements per se will, yes, tell you, if the planetary function will actually manifest the way it's supposed to, and then it'll tell you in the facets of that person or place or thing existence where those will exist. And where those planets are obviously would depend on what it affects, but the energy pattern or the signature, the radio waves more or less, that are actually going in between the planet angles, regardless of where those planets are, that energy will always be there. Meaning that this is a consistent thing. Granted, yes, aspects change every day, but that you can never disregard the energy waves from the aspects. And I'm going to go ahead and prove that right now by this elaborating on the studies and more or less of a story, because it wasn't even done by any kind of official science engineer or anything like that. And in fact, they actually asked for astronomers' help, and there was grants given of a couple $1 million, and they produced absolutely no conclusive solution to what they were trying to do. So, John Nelson, a radio engineer for RCA. So if you're familiar with RCA, I used to love their headphones. I don't think I had anything else. Early stages of long-distance radio shortwaves had significant interference. The interference was determined to be ionospheric conditions, so atmospheric conditions. Everybody's well aware of that when there's like a really nasty storm and their cell phone, drops calls or whatever, or loses bars, especially if you don't have Verizon. I understand why Verizon's thing's so expensive now. Actually, I'm going to talk about it throughout this. So, therefore, it was important to develop a method to track and or predict these conditions for quality broadcasting transmission. So, Nelson, the engineer for RCA, wanted to find a way to be able to either determine a pattern of this interference, so then they could find some sort of plan B to make sure that they get the actual transmission radio waves through, so they can continually have effective, high-quality broadcasting for radio. Which obviously it stemmed off into way more than just radio. But, so he essentially was trying to figure out what to do. The first thing that he thought to do, which would be what most, mainstream people or collective would think, is he went and requested the assistance of astronomers, which Nostradamus, Socrates, Aristotle, and I can't say that guy's name, but it's Ptleomy. He's the astronomer that took Aristotle's fifth essence theories, and he was an astronomer, and essentially he's the one that said, hey, astrology is real. So I wish there were more astronomers like that. There's not more astronomers like that today, clearly. If there are, then they're being hidden. But, so he went to astronomers thinking that, oh yes, well if it's atmospheric, then at least the astronomers would probably have a better idea as opposed to him. Just being a radio, a technological engineer or whatever. Some sort of engineer. I don't know if there's a generalization for that or not. It's not my thing. But, they ended up distributing the grants. Grants would be taxpayer money, right? I'm assuming. I think that's another layer of this that pisses me off. And they were millions of dollars, and they ended up never solving or giving them some sort of plausible or practical solution. Not even a solution, they didn't even give them answers. Which, I'm saying, Aristotle, if he fucking knew about that, he would be rolling over in his fucking ashes, because it's ashes now. Yeah, not even. But yeah, because back in the day, especially after Aristotle, his theory and his successor that was an astronomer that then tried to do essentially kind of what I'm doing and tell people that all of the different methodologies, there we go, methods are all the same thing, just different procedures or perspectives. RCA designated their own engineering staff with the head of Nelson, this particular engineer, and John Nelson, which determined that he could actually predict interference by tracking and observing different angles within planetary positions. Yes. So, an engineer for a private company, RCA, with, I'm sure, a limited budget, if anything, was able to do what the astronomers that had millions of dollars could not do. that either means that those people should not be astronomers, because clearly if ancient civilizations could even look up in the fucking sky with their bare vision, their bare eyes, and be able to determine what they did, and astronomers having that much money and the technology they had today for this, and they couldn't figure it out. And then furthermore, just to further prove that kind of, to further solidify that argument, clearly John Nelson of RCA figuring out that he could track planet alignments on his own just proves that they had the capacity to do so, and they did not do it. And so I think somebody should actually go back to those astronomers and let them know that they sabotaged the potential progression and invention or development of not only the radar, the radar for sonar, as well as us having cell phones. Thank those astronomers. If it would have just been up to those astronomers and this John Nelson guy didn't actually take this challenge on his own, we would likely still be dealing with some of this issues today. Or there would have been somebody else who would put their adult pants on and address the issue as he did. That's what pisses me off. That. Anyway. So, after Nelson developed this theory and was able to test it, again, another person who's not necessarily a scientist, doing the scientific method and showing scientists up, more or less, it was determined that his predictions and calculations were 95% accurate consistently. And that was documented by the U.S. Department of Commerce in multiple different publications yearly. The RCA engineer even released a book called The Cosmic Patterns, Their Influence on Man and His Communications, which is published by the AFA, which is the American Federation of Astrologers. Because, of course, no other publication is going to take that on. Stupid. I'm just so angry about this. Anyway. So not only was there cosmic interference with radio transmissions, but with radio transmissions, but phone networks as well were having interference issues by atmospheric conditions. In fact, the interference in the signals, particularly with phone networks, and then when they started getting into cellular phones, I'm sure they had to tackle this as well, is more sensitive to potential interference. So there, not only, you couldn't even just, predict aspects per se with the phone issue. They actually developed a what is it? They developed an electronic receiver that was called a parabolic reflector. Essentially, it's as if you were going to look at like a satellite dish, how it has to point in an area where there's no interference in order to pass a signal on, that sort of thing. They had to develop that specifically to even make telephones plausible and function. So that particular device was developed off of the theory of John Nelson for RCA by a doctor. What is his name? See, when I get all worked up, like I get flustered and I can't remember stuff. Dr. Jansky. Yes, he developed this particular device, and this device redirected transmission signals towards coordinates within that had limited or no aspect interference, meaning planet angle interference. The radio waves going on in between each planet. In fact, all planets and stars give off radio waves, or radiant waves, regardless if they illuminate or not, by the way. So, the discovery credited to Dr. Jansky, who created with these breakthroughs in radio astronomy. So he's the father of radio astronomy. If you don't know what radio astronomy is, that's essentially the new field of astronomy that where they use radio waves to use, it's the sonar thing, to be able to see if there's any kind of either interference or some sort of, you know, body of comets, stars of any kind in their way. And that's essentially how, again, the sonar and radio wave thing went off. So, yeah, breakthroughs with radio astronomy, which is the study of stars that are producing radio waves but do not illuminate. And then, oh yeah, see, you can tell I'm getting bitchy even in my writing. That doesn't usually happen, but unless I'm really pissed off. So, by the way, the parabolic reflector developed by engineers of private companies eventually became the prototype for radar tracking devices. I already said that. So, think of that. For you to have a cell phone that has a reliable wireless network signal all the time, no matter what kind of atmospheric interference there'd be, that particular cell phone company has to have so many of those parabolic reflectors, and probably some really, really tough, like, beefed up ones. So that actually explains why Verizon's prices are so expensive, because it is proven, obviously, that Verizon does have more reliable network. So the reason why you pay up the ass is because they actually have to charge you that. I'm not saying that there isn't some sort of, you know, greed, you know, within the totem pole with that, but that makes sense. I mean, I obviously kind of, you know, concluded that myself, but I didn't realize that it was because there's a particular device that is the only way that your phone will function. So, they've obviously been making some amazing progress with that, since data and stuff has been constantly more reliable. But that also makes sense, too, why cell phones and electronics and stuff, essentially, because, I mean, if they work off the same kind of thing, I mean, I already know that they're giving off, like, EMF readings and stuff like that, but you're constantly having, like, transmission waves, like, up in your face. Like, it's not even probably. I have transmission waves coming up on my face right now from my computer, I'm sure. Probably not that strong because this computer's really old. But anyway, I'm gonna go. Because I think that that's the gist of my, yeah, because I stopped writing notes. So, I feel like this just turned into an anger rant more than anything. But the engineer for RCA not only developed the capacity for us to have early radio transmission, but is the reason why you have your cell phone, which is probably how you're watching this. So thank John Nelson, because he's awesome. And don't thank astronomers or scientists, because they didn't do their job again. Starting to notice a pattern here. I think that's really funny, how the science community, their narrative for a long time, for hundreds of years, since, you know, back towards, like, the Crusade time, would say that the church is halting progress through breakthroughs. I'm pretty fucking sure they're projecting at this point, because this is not the first time that I've caught them sabotaging efforts for us to progress or evolve or to engineer something. Thank capitalism, guys, for having RCA's engineer and him having some sort of passion or purpose or motive to fucking find solutions. Now it ties into the video I did earlier. Isn't that awesome? Goodbye, guys. I'm leaving.
Hello, is there someone there who cares for God-forsaken souls and God-forsaken man? Is there someone there who cares?